Alright, I am back with another build, and this build is build video number 200. I can't believe we made it this far. I mean, every time we hit a significant milestone like 10k subscribers or the first 100 build videos, it's always kind of a big moment for the channel. And to celebrate 200 builds, I decided to go back through all of my videos, gathering statistics from all of them, which classes and subclasses were used the most / least, which equipment was kind of used, and which feats and races and all that sort of thing over 200 videos. And by taking these statistics, I learned an interesting fact. There is a subclass in this game that across 200 builds, in fact technically more than 200 builds, I think counting full party builds and duo builds and such like that, it's like more like 220, 230. Like, there is a subclass I have never used. And that subclass is Conjuration Wizard. Yes, in all of my videos, I have never used Conjuration Wizard, and there's probably a few reasons for that. Number one, usually when I take a wizard, like, unless I'm making a full wizard build, which will usually want to utilize other subclass features, it's often like a level 1 or 2 dip, and let's be honest, creating water once per short rest is not a very good subclass ability, so I've never really thought about using Conjuration Wizard for that. Its level 6 ability is okay, it's a somewhat restrictive teleport with a few caveats, but can be, you know, useful in a couple of situations. The level 10 feature is potentially amazing, as it makes it so that you cannot break concentration on a conjuration spell. Now tell me off the top of your head which useful concentration spell is Conjuration that you wouldn't want to be breaking. Exactly. Up until now, I've never really seen a reason to use it, to the point where it pretty much escaped my mind entirely until I looked at it from a new perspective. That perspective being the new Mistress Spells mod, which is available to all platforms, as I say in every video at this point, just to make sure people don't comment about it. And as such, we got a ton of new spells from the Conjuration school, namely summon spells. And because how some of the newer spells in Tasha's worked when it came to summoning, they actually do require concentration for some of them. At the very least, there's one in this build that definitely requires concentration that you're going to be using a lot by the time this build is kind of finished. And having the ability to not break concentration on that summon is actually going to be pretty handy. Overall though, Conjuration Wizard still isn't the strongest, but I thought, you know what, for build 200, let's finally use the final subclass. And honestly, it does work really well for this build, so I'm happy to include it here. And I really wanted to tackle making another summoner with the new spells, so it all just kind of rolled into one. We're also using Gale for this build today. You can consider this a Gale origin build, simply because I wanted to use Gale. You know, he's a fun character, and him being a human does help out with some things in this build, as well as the fact that in my very first original playthrough of BG3, Gale was a Conjuration Wizard. I don't know why he was a Conjuration Wizard, he just was. So I'm pretty sure I did respec him to Evocation eventually, but he was a Conjuration Wizard to start. And so we're going all the way back to my start of BG3 before I even started making videos on it. As you can tell from the combat footage, we have a lot of new toys to play with. And as such, this video is going to be quite long, as I do intend to show you all of the new summons at the end after the equipment section. So let's get this started. Without further ado, let's get started with build 200. Now, we're actually going to kick things off as a Sorcerer. Sorcerer is going to give us a few helpful things at level 1. Don't worry, we'll be able to get the Wizard levels fairly soon, as you'll be able to hit level 2 right after the Nautiloid, as most of you probably know at this point, but we're just taking a quick 1-level dip of Sorcerer to start. Namely, this is because I want Constitution saving throw proficiency, and if that's all you care about, go Fighter to get all of the martial weapon and armor proficiencies that you could possibly want, but we're not exactly looking to be at the forefront of combat, but if you really want the heavy armor proficiency, you can go for it. However, I personally do want to be able to use unarmored stuff because I have some clothing that I want to pick up, so I'm going to be going with Sorcerer for now. And Sorcerer is also going to help us with spell slots and yada yada yada, so we're going to go with that. Obviously, Gale is a human, meaning that he is going to have the Civil Militia feature, giving us weapon proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, and armor proficiency with light armor and shields. I don't personally use a shield on this build in my testing, but I do have a shield to recommend later, because you might as well just take the free bump to AC, right? Also, that armor proficiency is great because I do recommend a light armor for the early game. We're also going to get human versatility, giving us an additional skill to be proficient in, which is always nice. As for being a sorcerer, we are going to gain access to some cantrips. Now, obviously, as you can see here on the right, I've left charisma at 10 because we don't actually need it, so we're just going to be taking some utility cantrips here, like prestidigitation, friends, mage hand, and minor illusion. If there's a spell here that you as a BG3 player don't recognise, that's because it is from Mistress Spells, and don't worry, it's from Tabletop 5e, that being prestidigitation in this case, and obviously much more that we have down here. So, there you go. We have prestidigitation because I like it as a flavour cantrip. I just like having it, and if you don't have a mod that removes like blood and dirt, it's just so nice to have. But yeah, all of these are just great utility options for us here. For our spells, again, we're just here for utility. So we're going to be grabbing Shield and Mage Armour. Mage Armour is going to help us when we eventually use our unarmoured defense when we go back to clothing, but we're starting off with Light Armour, and Shield is one of the best reaction-based spells in the game, making us a lot more, well, not tanky, but it allows us to dodge more hits, which we want. Now, for your subclass, you can choose whatever you want. I can make arguments for all of these. Draconic Bloodline is great if you maybe want to pick up an extra utility spell from one of the Draconic Ancestries and don't want to have to cast Mage Armor all the time, you want to save that spell slot, you can just get the unarmored defense straight from that. Wild Magic could also be really fun if you wanted to flavor this build as like this chaotic like anchor of the planes. Like for some reason all of the different planes center on you, which is what allows you to be a summoner. Like you can just inherently pull creatures from different planes almost out of your own control, and because it's out of your own control you get wild magic effects whenever you do summon something. That could be kind of fun if you want to play that concept. But I think for the best utility you're going to get, you're going to want Storm Sorcery. The best part about being a summoner is you don't actually have to be in the forefront of combat. That's what your summons are for, and in fact you really don't want to be hit at all with your squishy wizard hit die. So being able to just eject yourself out of combat with Storm Sorcery's tempestuous magic, allowing you to fly as a bonus action without receiving opportunity attacks after casting a level 1 or higher spell, that just is going to give you a ton of battlefield maneuverability to get out of the thick of things and let your summons do the fighting for you. And this is something you're definitely going to want to do, because the combat footage I'm showing in this video is actually one of my earlier combat footage kind of attempts, where I actually did fail the encounter, but I wanted to show it off because there were some unique interactions going on that I do want to discuss later on in the video. But if I made better use of Storm Sorcery, I probably wouldn't have died. But even though I died, again, you'll see in the combat footage. I'll be showing a bit more later. Anyways, but yeah, I think Storm Sorcery is a good overall pick if you really want that extra movement, which I do think is valuable in this build. Otherwise, Draconic Bloodline or Wild Magic can all be really fun and useful, so pick your favourite here, but I am going to recommend Storm Sorcery, personally. Next up, for our ability scores, this is a bit weird. I did go for kind of a standard wizard spread here, with a dexterity of 14, a constitution of 16, and an intelligence of 16, with wisdom and charisma being whatever, and obviously dumping strength. However, I would say that this is one of those builds where technically you don't really need your spellcasting modifier. If you wanted to focus purely on the summon and kind of take a back seat in combat, you don't actually need that much intelligence. You're going to want intelligence to get the number of prepared spells, and I do max out intelligence in this build to make sure that we can have as many different summons as possible, but if you have a select few summons that you want to focus on, then you can actually pump up constitution or dexterity for better AC or HP if you want. So kind of decide what's best for you. Me, I'm personally all about creating a small army for myself, so I did bump up my intelligence to max, which is going to help with things like cantrips, because the other idea with this build is that once you're in a safe place and your summons are taking the brunt of the damage, you can just pepper people with cantrips. So I would probably recommend still going for kind of the standard wizard spread like I have here, but you can get a bit creative with this one. Just saying, thought I'd point that out. Next up, for our skill proficiencies, Gale is a sage, which is honestly what I would pick for this build anyway, so we're going to get Arcana and History. For our sorcerer proficiencies, I went with Persuasion and Insight because those felt nice to have, and for my human proficiency, I went with Investigation, but honestly, you can take anything. Acrobatics to resist being shoved would probably be good, but it's entirely up to you. Let's keep moving. As I said, with level 2, let's jump straight over to Wizard now. Wizard is going to give us a bunch more things, like even more cantrips, but now we get to take our power options. Now, obviously, I do want to kind of grab some offensive cantrips here, and there's a big selection that we can pick up. My main one here is going to be Firebolt. This is going to be our standard, just hit them from afar when we have nothing else to do with our turn cantrip. If we're not summoning extra things or resummoning things, we're just going to be throwing out Firebolts left, right and centre to just get that extra damage. Starts off with a 1d10 of fire, but then can be scaled up a bit later on, and we'll have some equipment that is going to make this even stronger. So overall, Firebolt is pretty solid. I would also recommend Ray of Frost as a really good option here too, because it can reduce the target's movement speed by 3 meters, meaning that enemies that do want to try and get to you instead of your summons, they're going to have a harder time doing so. However, we are actually going to get this from a piece of equipment that I would recommend in the early game, and when we eventually do swap out that piece of equipment, we can just pick this up later with our wizard levels anyway, so you don't actually need to take it here. Some other things I can recommend though are Mind Spike, a psychic damage cantrip, which is a great damage type to have that does 1d6 of psychic damage. It throws a psychic spike into a creature's mind to inflict a negative 1d4 penalty to saving throws until the end of your next turn. A lot of your summons are going to have saving throw effects, and if you want to make sure that those summons effects are going to go off, using Mind Sliver on the opponent that they're going to be affecting can really help make sure that goes off. It's basically Bane, and it comes with an int save, which a lot of monsters are going to have a bit of trouble with, so I absolutely recommend picking this one up. And the final one I'm going to recommend is Sapping Sting. Sapping Sting is a necrotic damage cantrip which can deal 1d4 necrotic damage, but it also can make the target prone, which of course means that if they're knocked prone, you and all your summons get advantage on the hit. Well, mainly your summons that have melee attacks. Obviously this is a con save, will be less useful until late game when con saves are fairly high, but in the early game, this can actually be quite potent for making your summons effective. Some other cantrips I can recommend at this level are also Infestation, which does poison damage and can push targets away from you, which can be really useful again for keeping that distance. There's also things like Create Bonfire, which can just create an AoE bonfire area, although this is concentration, so you might want to make sure you're careful with that one. There's also things like if enemies do get too close to you, you can grab Sword Burst or Thunderclap. Toll the Dead is just a very powerful cantrip overall if you just want an alternative damage option. In fact, that might be better than Firebolt overall, but again, with the equipment that we have, Firebolt will be a bit more reliable, and this is a wisdom save which some creatures, especially intelligent ones, can make. So overall, it's kind of up to you what you want to take here, but I do think these three to start are going to be very, very strong, so that's what I recommend. Next up, utility spells for level 1. First up, we do get our first summon here, that being Find Familiar. Now I know what you're thinking, this isn't that strong, and unfortunately you are correct, it's not the strongest thing in the world. What this is here to do is to help out your allies, taking maybe the damage away from them, giving them advantage on certain hits, you know, stuff like that, just being another ally on the battlefield that you can control from a safe distance. Outside of combat, you can summon it as a ritual, so you don't even need to spend a spell slot on it, and who doesn't want a pet? Come on. And as well, in fact, you can also have this be resummoned in combat, so you can always have something to do. But again, probably at this level, you're going to be playing a slightly more standard wizard, spamming spells from the backline. And as you can see, we don't have anything new as far as summons are concerned yet, but we do have a few options for utility. Namely, we can get Enhanced Sleep, Longstrider, and Featherfall. Very good generic spells to have anyway. Longstrider we can cast on our summons after summoning them, meaning that we can give them a bit of a boost to movement speed, which some summons do really appreciate, because some are just primarily melee focused. And then also you can take some other useful utility spells, like Gift of Alacrity, to increase your initiative bonus. That will allow you to be able to summon things early if you get caught off guard. And then finally, it's entirely up to you, but I'm going to recommend the bread and butter Magic Missile. If you're not going to be using a cantrip, you're going to be using this to just attack from a distance reliably. And again, this is a great thing to have if you decide you do want to dump your intelligence a bit, because this damage does not scale off your intelligence, it's always flat, so you could go with that. There's also the option of taking Jim's Magic Missile if you want something that's slightly more powerful, but does have the chance to backfire in your face, quite literally. It's what it says right in front there. So it's entirely up to you if you want to rely on good old Jim or not. Who's Jim? I don't know. I probably should. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments. There you go. There's your engagement comment question for the day. Who the fuck's Jim? So, and you can prepare your spells as such. I would probably prepare something looking a bit like this. I think this is the most useful overall. Next up, at level 2, we do get to take our subclass, and it's finally happening. we're taking Conjuration Wizard. I can't believe I've never actually said that before. So, with Conjuration, you are going to be able to get reduced cost on your Conjuration spells from spell scrolls, and I do think there are some spells you should be taking from spell scrolls as you progress in this build, but we'll get to that a bit later. And of course, we get the almighty Minor Conjuration Create Water. Once per short rest, you can call forth rain. It extinguishes exposed flames and forms a water surface. It's basically create or destroy water once per short rest. Yeah, I dip there. Let me explain why I have a problem with this. Why would you ever want to take Conjuration Wizard for this when Tempest Cleric exists and does the exact same thing, but better? Because if you're running this for the fact that you can make enemies vulnerable to lightning damage, and you want to combine that with Storm Sorcerer, then just take Tempest Cleric and get Destructive Wrath as well. I don't see the point. Like, there's a reason I haven't used a subclass up until now. We do have, though, some summons that can use electric attacks, so you can make them wet, and those summons will have advantage. It has a use... Oh, not advantage, more damage. Vulnerability. It has uses in this build. Really trying with this one, guys. But next up, we do get to take another couple of level 1 spells. And again, it's up to you what you want to take here. We're kind of taking everything that I would say is great for utility at this point in the build. I mean, I'm good. Let's take Jim's Magic Missile. Let's give the guy some credit. And if we find that Shield is not really going to be helping us, another great utility reaction spell will be Absorb Elements, allowing us to take half the damage from the next elemental attack to target us, and deal an additional 1d6 of that element type on our next attack. We're not going to be making attacks, but getting sudden resistance to elemental damage could be really useful for keeping our squishy wizard HP, you know, from hitting 0, which again matters less than you would think in this build. Very strange. Again, we'll get to that later, so feel free to choose whatever you like for your level 1 spells. At Wizard level 3, we're going to get access to level 2 spells, and we're going to start to get some proper powerhouse summons now with Flaming Sphere. This is a concentration-based summon, which can be a bit sketchy, but again, if we play it right, it's not really going to matter. We can summon a Flaming Sphere that damages any nearby enemies and objects, and we can move the sphere, and it emits a bright light. The damage is 2d6 fire. Pretty solid overall. 2d6 fire damage every turn is not bad. I mean, I know Scorching Ray exists, which is 66 fire damage every turn, but Flaming Sphere is a summon, and that's what we want. It's also a Conjuration spell, which is important for things that we'll be getting later. Now, we also do get another level 2 summoning spell here, and this one's kind of funny. It's Flock of Familiars. So instead of summoning 1 familiar, you can summon 3, and you can control them all separately. So any benefits that you were getting from a single familiar, you can now get from 3. The only caveat being is that this is a concentration-based spell. But it does let you summon 3 crabs. That is extremely important. It's the best spell in the game so far. At this point, we also do get to choose some more prepared spells. I'm going to say we're going to definitely load up on our summon spells at this point. At level 4 of Wizard, we are going to get our first feat. Now, there are a few things you could take here that could be advantageous. Probably most of you are thinking, well, we're getting these concentration-based summons, let's get Warcaster. Well, we're not going to need Warcaster. We're going to get this ability from an early game piece of armor, and again, like I said, eventually we won't ever break concentration on our Conjuration spells, so we don't really need Warcaster here. At that point, you may think, well, let's grab Spell Sniper and grab something like Eldritch Blast for a really powerful cantrip. You could, but I do feel like that's a bit of a waste. We do have some of the new stuff like Telepathic, Telekinetic, which can be used to shove enemies away from you. That could be really helpful. Metamagic Adept, if you want some sorcery points, although you could just take a second level of Sorcerer for that. There's a few things you could do here. Lucky could also be really useful for keeping both you and your summons in check. Honestly, like I say, if you're not too interested in completely maxing out your intelligence with this build, there is a lot of room to play with these feats. So take whatever strikes your fancy. But again, I want my small army, so I'm just going to take that buff to intelligence for now. We also do get to pick another cantrip at this level. I'm going to take the aforementioned Ray of Frost. Now, we also do get to take some more level 2 spells. And again, it's entirely up to you really what you want to pick here. I would say that there's a few options to play around with here. Obviously, Misty Step is a pretty powerful spell for this build. I mean, it is in general, but it would be really nice to just be able to say, actually, I'm over here now without having to rely on Benign Transposition, which we'll get later. And Misty Step will just be great in general for just moving around the battlefield, making sure that we're away from our enemies. So if you want to take that, you can. There's also blindness, which will allow us to blind a creature if they fail a con save, meaning that all of our summons will gain advantage on their attack rolls against them, which could be really, really potent as well. I'm not sure if any summons have dark vision, but darkness could be useful if they do. It's entirely up to you kind of what you want to pick here, but let's discuss some of the new options, because again, this is build number 200, guys. Let's play with some new stuff, namely Silvery Barbs. Probably never going to recommend this one in the video again, so for build 200, let's do it anyway. Silvery Barbs is notorious for being banned at tables in regular tabletop D&D, and as soon as I read this effect, you're going to be able to see why. Silvery Barbs forces an enemy to re-roll their attack roll or saving throw. This is a reaction-based spell. Until the end of your next turn, you gain Silvery Luck, allowing you to give a friendly creature advantage on their next attack roll or saving throw. This can't be used again while still affected by Silvery Luck. Basically, what Silvery Barbs is doing is if your enemy is about to succeed a save or attack your summon, or anybody, your party members, whatever, you can just say, actually, no, that doesn't hit. And then, as an extra fuck you, you just say, and now the Great Weapon Master Barbarian over there is going to smack you on the head, guaranteed. Like, what? Or Paladin even, maybe. That would be even stronger. Like, this is going to be great for keeping our summons alive, so I definitely would recommend it for this build. And again, we're just playing it for fun, but I actually do think this one is a bit strong. Maybe not so much in BG3, but I feel like there's principle to the matter, you know? And for our other spell, I'm actually going to recommend another Conjuration spell, which I've used a few times now already, Summon Moonblade. It's a Conjuration spell, so it's going to work with our features, and allows us to summon a +1 magical flaming or chilling short sword. Entirely up to you what you want to pick here. We're not really going to be attacking with this, but just having it in our hands, we're going to gain a +1 to our armor class, which with all this said and done, will mean we'll have a 20 AC, and can give us resistance to either fire or cold damage depending on what type of blade we choose. So it's an extra resistance and a bunch to our armor class. Like, we will take entire pieces of equipment just for a +1 to armor class, so having this just passively on us without having to maintain concentration is really nice. And if by some horrid situation we do end up with a monstrosity staring right down at us at melee range, we can give them a bonk for a decent chunk of damage, even with our kind of shoddy physical stats. So yeah, definitely would recommend Summon Moonblade for this build for that alone. At level 5 of Wizard, we hit level 3 spell slots. This is where the fun really begins. We're going to get access to 2 new summon spells right off the bat. Number 1 being Summon Shadowspawn. Allows you to summon a shadowy spirit of fury, despair, or fear that each have different effects. This is a really, really fun one. There's a lot of fun interactions with this spell. Again, more details on that later. We're also going to get another fun one called Summon Lesser Demons, giving us access to an imp and a quasit, just like that. And they last until your next long rest, no concentration required. Same as the Summon Shadowspawn, so we get 2 pretty effective, long-lasting summons right out the gate. We also gain access to more prepared spells at this point. Pick whatever works best for you. I would say let's grab these guys. At Wizard level 6, we're going to get our subclass feature, being Benign Transposition. Teleport to a nearby unoccupied space, or swap places with an ally. You can use this once per long rest, unless you are able to use a level 1 or higher Conjuration spell to refuel the charge. This is brilliant on the summoner build who just wants to say, nope, I'm out of here. And actually being able to swap places with your summons can give you a bit to work with. Obviously you don't want to teleport into combat, but if you're in combat and your summon isn't, you can immediately swap them in. And trust me, when you trade places with a dragon, spoilers, we get a fucking dragon, yeah, that's going to be pretty fun to drop on your enemies. So I think Benign Transposition is a super, super fun thing for this. And I didn't realize it actually just lets you teleport without swapping with an ally. I thought this whole time you had to swap places with an ally. Unless that's been changed by something, I've been an idiot for a year and a half. So, call me what you will. But we also did get to pick 2 more level 3 spells or lower at this point. And I would say there's nothing else really from the new stuff that we need. There is Spirit Shroud, which I would say is technically a summon, as it says call for spirits to fight. But again, it's about being in melee range, which we don't really want to be if we can help it. So let's jump on over to Animate Dead, allowing us to resurrect an undead servant from a corpse. Obviously, this is actually a necromancy spell, not a constitution spell, but hey, a summon is a summon, we're going to take it. And obviously, you do have a few more options as well here. I would say something like Blink could be useful if you want a bit more tankiness. Counterspell, always useful. Haste, you can use this on a summon. Just be aware that it is a concentration spell and it's a transmutation spell, so we're not going to get that guaranteed uptime on it once we hit level 10 of Wizard. But this could still be really goddamn good and can make one summon extraordinarily powerful as long as you're able to keep yourself from being hit, which you absolutely can with this build. And there is the aforementioned Misty Step once again. I think I will take Haste for this because I like the idea of just giving one summon a huge buff, so let's grab that here. And I would say we could slot in Animate Dead here. Yeah, looks good to me. At level 7 of Wizard, we gain access to level 4 spells, and I know I said where level 3 is where the fun begins. This is where the real fun begins. Obviously, we get the vanilla spell Conjure Minor Elemental here, which is 3 different elemental summons, which can be really, really useful. However, we now get access to 4 new summon spells. First up is Summon Abjuration, allowing you to call forth an aberrant spirit. I don't know why I had trouble saying that. This has 2 really interesting summons that I will show off a bit later. One of them you'll think is really goddamn cool. We also get Summon Construct, allowing us to summon a spirit of clay, metal, or stone. Pretty damn awesome. We get to prepare these spells next, so I would say at this point you're probably not using Flock of Familiars, so we can drop that, and I'll drop Longstrider as well. Let's pick up those other 2 spells, shall we? We've got Summon Elemental. Basically, this is kind of a slightly lesser version of Conjure Elemental, but having 2 elementals out is still 2 elementals on the field. These guys still get all the good multi-attack goodness and all that sort of thing that the regular elementals get. They just have a little bit less HP and can't be upscaled into Myrmidons. But again, it's another body on the board, and elementals are really useful bodies to have, so we're gonna grab it anyway. And also Summon Greater Demon. This allows us to conjure a powerful demon from the abyss called a Varrock, which is like a velociraptor with wings. It's really cool. But the thing is this is our first big summon spell that we have to maintain concentration on. And as long as we maintain that concentration, we will still be able to control it. Otherwise, it will become hostile. So that's what we're going to be picking up here, and that is going to be really... It's going to be really helpful to have the level 10 feature when using this spell, but it's absolutely awesome, really recommend it. And so we're going to pick these 2 up. I would say at this point you're probably not using Flaming Sphere either, we are getting a better concentration based spell, so we're going to take these 2 here. We also did get another feat, let's bump up that intelligence to increase our prepared spell limit. At Wizard level 9, we get access to level 5 spells, meaning that not only do we get the classic Conjure Elemental, which was already in the game, we also do gain access to other level 5 spells, including 2 new summon spells. Actually, 3 new summon spells, I just realised. Which I did realise earlier, I just forgot that it was here. I thought it was level 6 for some reason. Anyways, first up, Summon Draconic Spirit. Yes, we just got an actual dragon. Call forth the spirit of a powerful chromatic dragon to assist you. While within 80 meters, you gain resistance to the dragon's primary element. Again, we want to be as far away from the main crux of combat as possible, so we don't really want to be too close, but if we are, we do get a resistance, which is quite nice. This dragon can only move by flying, unfortunately just a restriction of BG3 in general, but it can disguise itself to walk normally while in your party, and then during combat, it'll automatically transform back. Really fun little workaround by the creator of the mod here, and it's just super awesome. The dragons get a ton of interesting abilities, and I just love that they're here. We also get to pick up Infernal Calling. This will allow you to summon either a Cambion or an Infernal Legion of Merrigans, which is really, really cool. But after 5 turns, the devil will make a wisdom saving throw against your charisma spell DC once per turn, and if it succeeds, it breaks free from your control and becomes hostile to everyone. So that can be a bit of an issue. This thing is going to break free after 5 turns if you don't have a high amount of charisma. Otherwise, you will be able to keep this thing on you. And again, it's a powerful ally, even for those 5 turns you can have. And if it does turn hostile against you, it can still keep attacking your enemies for you, but you won't have direct control over it. And in my testing, I didn't have any issues here. I never had it break free from my control. I was still able to control it. So I think we're good. I think that charisma spell DC might be from where it's like a warlock spell normally. I do think it uses your intelligence otherwise. I think it just uses your regular spell save DC. That might just be an error in the description because I never had an issue with it. And then we also do get to select these two to be prepared. At level 10 of Conjuration Wizard, we get the capstone subclass feature, which is Focused Conjuration. Damage taken while you are concentrating on a conjuration spell will not break your concentration. So that means we're never going to be losing our concentration on our summoned greater demon, which means we're always going to have it under our control. And if we do end up using something like Flock of Familiars or Flaming Sphere, we're never going to lose those unless they themselves die. And if there's any other conjuration spells that we do decide to use, we can just keep them up. Unfortunately, Haste, again, is a transmutation spell, not conjuration, which is a bit disappointing because otherwise that would absolutely be what I would be focusing on all the time. But otherwise, this is still a really good addition to the roster. And again, it's a fun reason to use this class for this build. So here we are. We're finally here at this surprisingly powerful thing, but it's just not that powerful normally, if that makes sense. Anyways, another cantrip. Entirely up to you what you want to pick here. We've kind of got everything we could possibly want. I did recommend Infestation earlier, which now does 3d6 poison damage, so we'll take that. We also did get to pick some more spells. I'm actually going to say we want Conjure Elemental and Big B's Hand. Big B's Hand lets you summon basically a bigger mage hand that lasts for 10 turns and can strike, basically punch, push, and grapple enemies with a big dollop of force damage, which is quite fun. Those of you who are fans of Critical Role will know that a certain short little bard man made very good use of this spell in the past, and it is another conjuration spell, so we're going to be taking it here. Let's see, Big B's Hand, and oh god, we've got so many summon spells. Look, I can't even keep track of them all. Let's drop... Now, just for the sake of it, because I didn't actually use it that much in my testing, we're going to drop Magic Missile. I mainly use cantrips in this build. I was a level 11... I'm very excited about this build, and I'm trying to get through it all for you. Anyways, at level 11 of this build, you're going to gain access to level 6 spells. There is only one big level 6 spell here for summoning, unfortunately, which is Create Undead. Which is a pretty standard staple. It's already vanilla, allowing us to create a big mummy to fight at our side. However, if you are playing a druid or a cleric, there are some other level 6 summon spells like Conjure Fey, which could be quite fun and what I will honestly be exploring in separate videos. But again, a full party build of a summoner druid, a summoner wizard, a summoner cleric, and a summoner warlock. Ooh, that could be like almost like a mod showcase type video where I like showcase all the summons at once. Oh shit, that could be fun. Let me know if you want to see that. But we do also get to take another spell, and looking down here at the level 6 spells, unfortunately, again, we don't have any level 6 spells that are summon focused. However, there is Tense's Transformation, which if you do want to use a sword, this does Moonblade familiar, this can be quite funny. Transmutation Wizard get a bonus effect, which I'll save for another video, I won't spoil that here, but this does allow you to get like extra attack, a bunch of temporary HP. It's actually really cool. It just comes with the caveat that you cannot cast spells while under the transformation's effect. Otherwise, it is really, really fun. So I don't know, we'll have a look at that another day. So for now, let's pick up the only summon spell that we didn't yet grab, and that is Conjure Minor Elemental. And we'll slap those in here like so. What do I want to drop? What do I want to drop? Let's drop Silvery Barbs, just for the sake of showing off all the summons. And that is the bush. Where's Gale? Oh, Gale. There he is. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is... well, it's an army. Those of you who have played Baldur's Gate 3 and played as a summoner druid know exactly how powerful this setup can be, just littering the field with summons and just letting them either take hits or deal damage for you. The only thing I kind of had with that build was, I mean, you combine it with Moon Druid and you're very, very tanky and you have a lot of offensive power, but otherwise, a lot of the summons were just kind of okay. Conjure Minor Elementals was fine, it put a couple of extra bodies on the board, but they were never the strongest combatants. Same with things like Find Familiar, obviously not that strong. The Dryad spell was quite fun, and the Dryad could summon a Woodwode, which could be quite fun in theory, but again, could get dealt with pretty quickly in the late game, your big ones being the Conjure Elemental spell that you'd get way later into the game. So while playing a Summoner Druid is fun, I don't know, the progression of it feels a bit strange. You basically are just playing a moon druid with a few friends, which, nothing wrong with that. But this feels like a summoner. We've got infernal beings, we've got aberrations from the hells, we've got elementals of all shapes and sizes, we've got undead, we've got constructs, we've got a goddamn dragon. It doesn't get much better than this. We've even got a giant hand. What else can I say? This feels like the quintessential summoner, and the way you can play it is so interesting. You can play as this diligent wizard who scoured countless tomes and lost legends of the different planes of existence, contacting other planes through various magical means to learn the true names of demons, devils, and various elementals so that they can pull them in from their home planes to fight for them. I'm planning to play a character like that very soon in the actual tabletop, and I'm very, very excited. And then there's also the idea if you go with the wild magic idea, where actually you are just this anchor that holds the very planes of reality together and allows them all to exist in the same universe, and as such you unwillingly pull various creatures to fight by your side and protect you, but again that wild magic surges forth. Maybe it's just an archfey playing a prank on you, just making you summon all this random bullshit. Like, it could, and even the wild magic effects can technically summon other things, so that could actually be really fun. Flavor it however you want. This build can do so many different things, so many different ways of approaching it, and again, combine this with a druid and a cleric, and yeah, you've got an army. That's actually definitely going to be a video. I actually want to make that just like a, here is all the summons you can have at once, let's see what they can do together, and just watch my game reach like 30 FPS. But honestly, I just absolutely love how this build turned out. I love being able to play with all these new fun things, and again, finally using a Conjuration wizard as well. So without further ado, let's get into the equipment. Right, so I'm not going to lie to you, the equipment on this build isn't exactly special. Since a lot of the kind of offensive capability of the build comes from the summons, you kind of can just take some basic kit with you and get quite a lot out of it. So I do have some specific options, but any generic spellcaster stuff will work just fine here. So feel free to fine-tune the equipment as you see fit. So let's talk about the weapon. First up, you've got the Marker-Heshkir staff as kind of your end game goal. It can be either this or the Staff of Spell Power, because they both come with the Arcane Battery feature, allowing you to basically cast one of your high-level summons without expending a spell slot. And since we're going to have to be constantly kind of re-summoning things as we go, as they get destroyed in longer battles, if you don't just completely overwhelm the enemy, being able to just kind of cast multiple high-level spells per day is going to be really useful. And the Marker-Heshkir is going to help with that, because it's also a +2 quarterstaff at the end of the day if you need it, as well as you can cast Kareska's Favour as well, giving you access to some more spells, again, if you feel like you need them. You know, you can get things like Destructive Wave, Fireball, all that sort of thing. So if you want to be a bit more offensive on the backline, this can help without having to need to specifically search out spell scrolls. And these spells will not take up your spell slots either, so that can actually be really helpful. So I would say the Marker-Heshkir is definitely the best kind of end game goal for this build. However, there's also, and if you want to, this can also work, there is the Harper Sacred Striker. The Harper Sacred Striker will give you another summon, a level 6 spiritual weapon, which can be really powerful. You can summon it as a bonus action once per long rest. So if you feel like you don't need that extra spell slot as much, you can actually use the spiritual weapon. However, of course, you can just use these two staffs interchangeably, or take the dual wielder feat and have both of them on at the same time. Although, again, that's kind of there as an option. So feel free to kind of swap between these two staffs as you see fit. I am pretty sure that if you unequip the Harper Sacred Striker after summoning the weapon, it does take the summon away, but I did forget to test that, so let me know if that's the case. And I did say before that you can pair this with a shield if you want, and so I think the Sentinel Shield is quite good for this build as just a generic option, as a lot of the more powerful shields you probably are going to want on your more martial focused characters. But the Sentinel Shield works great for us here by giving us a +3 bonus to our initiative rolls. So if you are caught off guard and end up in a combat encounter, you do have a high likelihood of going first in, or at least close to first in the initiative order, meaning that you are able to you know, just get your summons out really quickly. And it also gives you advantage on perception checks, so you're less likely to be surprised. Overall, I do think for the +2 AC that this gives, this is worth having around. So we can slap that on here just as an example. I mean, I'm not a fan of, like, pure casters using shields aesthetically, but from a pure power building perspective, it does make sense to have this one around. So we'll have those there. Next up, for our armor, let's have a look at the hats first. I've gone for the Hat of Fire Acuity, which may seem a bit strange, but hear me out. Again, your main thing, if you're not really summoning anything or casting high-level spells, which for the most part you probably won't be, you're going to be sat back casting cantrips. And since my kind of recommended cantrip of choice for just base damage is Firebolt, then the Hat of Fire Acuity is going to be quite nice. Whenever you deal fire damage, you gain Arcane Acuity for 2 turns. For each turn of Arcane Acuity, you gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and spell difficulty class. So what this would essentially allow you to do is for each Firebolt that you successfully hit, your next Firebolt has a greater chance to hit. So with enemies with high AC, that starts to become less and less of an issue with more consecutive hits. Overall, it's a minor buff, but it's a good early game option if you so desire. The other option for you could also be the Cold Brim Hat. Once per turn, any condition inflicted on a target also applies encrusted with frost. So, Ray of Frost, if you decide to go with that over Firebolt, does kind of come with a status condition that causes the reduced movement. So the Cold Brim Hat can trigger off of Ray of Frost, and Encrusted with Frost would allow you to make it so that the affected entity has disadvantage on dex saves, and when there are 7 or more turns remaining, they take an extra 1d4 of cold damage on a failed con save, and become frozen. Frozen makes them completely immobile, which can be really helpful. So you can I would actually say it's up to you if you just want more reliable damage from your cantrips just over time with the higher guaranteed chance to hit, or if you want the added chance of being able to inflict additional conditions, which could be slightly more debilitating for the enemy while your summons attack them over and over. Honestly, it's a toss-up between Fire Acuity or Cold Brim, overall if you're just focusing on your backline offense. Otherwise, if you want to focus more on the undead side of things, you could go for Circle of Bones, which will allow you to kind of give allied undead within 6 meters resistance to physical damage, and it also gives you a casting of Animate Dead once per long rest without consuming a spell slot, but it cannot be upcast, so you can't get like the more powerful like ghouls and skeletons and like flying ghouls and all sorts of things like that. Overall, it can be okay. If you decide you maybe want to keep your undead summons on the backline to protect you if the enemies do get close, then this can be quite potent. But again, because the whole goal of this build is for you to hang way the hell back while your summons take care of the enemies, then I don't see Circle of Bones getting as much utility as it probably otherwise would be, because really, you do just want to kind of send your summons in to be cannon fodder a lot of the time if they're not going to be one of your big heavy hitters, like for Dragon, for example. So, I don't know. I feel like any of these 3 could work. Probably either Cold Brim or Fire Acuity is going to be better overall. And again, because these are kind of the less powerful equipment options, you can save your more powerful equipment for the other members of the party. So, with that, let's look at the Cloak. It's the Cloak of Protection. It gives us a +1 to our armor class and saving throws. The saving throws are nice because it's going to help with concentration saving throws before we get to level 10, and the armor class is nice because that will stop us from getting hits in the first place, which is also good for our concentration saving throws. So, you've got that going for you. Next up, I've decided to show off the early game armor before the end game armor, because otherwise the character creation screen that this whole video has had up for the past, I don't know how long, would have looked very weird. So, the Spider Silk Armor is your early game option, giving you an advantage on Constitution saving throw checks. Because we are human Gale, we can wear this as light armor. Having advantage on those Constitution saving throws means advantage on concentration saving throws, which means that we're more likely to keep our powerful concentration summons up. Especially in the early game, where our main summon, like Flaming Sphere, if we're still working with level 2 spell slots or Flock of Familiars, is a concentration thing, you are going to want this. It's going to be extremely helpful for you. You get it very, very early on in the game. It's actually Minthara's starter armor, so it's quite nice to have overall. However, when you get to the end game, it's kind of hard to say no to the Wave Mother's Robe. The Wave Mother's Robe is going to give you resistance to fire and cold damage. That's 2 resistances, that's very nice. If you're standing on a water surface at the start of your turn, you heal 1d4 hit points, and you also gain access to create or destroy water as a level It's actually cast as a level 4 spell, I believe, not level 1. I think the tooltip is wrong here, meaning that you also kind of get and you also can do this once per short rest, so you essentially get 2 water casts, one from Conjuration Wizard and one from this, which, again, if you're playing with the lightning summons, can actually be very, very effective, and it kind of does fit on the theme of the Conjuration Wizard, so I felt like it made sense, and it gives us a +1 to our armor class, which is very, very nice on this build. Let me just slap on the mage armor real quick. Oh, there we go. Let me just fix the camera as well. See, we got that tempestuous magic as well. We can fly. And with that, we now have 19 AC with all of our equipment. Again, if you do the Summon Moonblade, that's a 20. If you wear a shield, that can be up to a 22, 23. Very good AC. But of course, I didn't include it in the character creation screen because you're only going to get a brief glimpse of this. Yeah, I don't think we were going to be able to take this video seriously. Let's leave the camp clothing on, shall we? It looks nice. It looks mysterious. Look, it's got a neckerchief. Who doesn't love a neckerchief? The amount of hate comments I'm going to get for not keeping Gale in his slut outfit. Let's forget I ever said that sentence. Anyways, moving on. You have a couple of options for your gloves, and they're both obtained in the early game. First up, my kind of overall recommended option is the Braces of Defense. It's just 2 more armor class while we're unarmored. Very, very nice to have. However, there is the Abyss Beckoners, which is the biggest double-edged sword ever for this build. All of the wear and summoned creatures have resistance to all damage except psychic. That is amazing. That is Wild Heart Bear Barbarian level resistance on all of your summons in an aura around you. There's like a certain range limit to it. Which is reason number 1 where I don't 100% recommend these, because again, we want to be far away. Number 2 reason I don't 100% recommend this. That all of your summon creatures have to succeed a wisdom saving throw at the start of their turn or be driven mad, which means they can be hostile towards you. If we took a level of cleric with this build and had sanctuary, that becomes less of an issue, but we didn't. So, do I ultimately recommend these? Not really. The feature can be very, very detrimental because the summons will also attack each other, not just you. And when we already have a couple of summons that have the potential to turn hostile against us, that can turn our whole summoner shtick into a situation that backfires on us pretty goddamn quickly. Because again, even if we have other summons that are still under our control that could potentially not be under our control anymore, and then the Abyss Beckoners turn one of our loyal summons, make them attack the summons who are not so loyal, and then they lose that loyalty because we technically attacked them. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So I have to recommend it because if you make a summoner build, you kind of have to talk about the Abyss Beckoners, but honestly, do you really want to take that risk? In my opinion, no. I feel like a lot of the summons are still quite tanky. I mean, here's the problem with this, right? Either your summons have a HP pool where they're going to die in 1 or 2 hits anyway, regardless of what resistances they have. For example, Find Familiar, the Imps, the Imp and Quasit, what have you. Or they have so much HP and they're really tanky anyway. They either come with some basic resistances built in, like some of the Elementals or even the Dragon, that really all you're doing is making a goddamn dragon hostile to you. So in the end, I'm going to say no. Don't use these. Use another piece of generic hand equipment that is going to be overall better, like the Braces of Defense. I will also say, though, that the Braces of Defense don't work with a shield, so you might want to make sure that you're kind of picking and choosing. If you want to use another glove option but still want the AC, use the shield. So overall, you're going to have about 20 AC when all is said and done with this setup. The Braces and the shield don't stack. I probably should have remembered that. And finally, for your boots, we've got a classic, the Boots of Speed. Again, you could go with the Disintegrating Nightwalkers here for the once per short rest Misty Step. However, I kind of like the Boots of Speed more because it's a thing you can do every turn quite reliably. It gets you a ton of distance because it's a bonus action dash, but it also makes opportunity attacks have disadvantage against you. So you're very, very likely to get away because we also have things like Shield, which you can also use as a reaction to bump up that AC on that disadvantaged hit. And we have up to 20 AC anyway. So really, 21 AC. It's not so bad. So I think the boots of speed overall are a bit better. I think they're slightly more reliable, but for disintegrating Nightwalkers or the Helldusk boots could both work here. But you might find that you want those two things again on your more martial focused characters. So I think that the boots of speed as an early game option as well really do work. Now, over to the accessories, we have the Spellcrux Amulet. This gives us another spell slot of any choice. Always choose 6th, because basically this means we get another high-level spell slot, we get another summon, whatever have you. Same reasoning as the Marker Heshke here. And once you've used it, you can swap it out for the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation to add your spellcasting ability modifier, again, to the damage dealt of your cantrips that deal Ice, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. So since we both have Ray of Frost and what's it called, Firebolt, those are going to get even more damage, making that backline offense with cantrips much more potent. So keep the Spellcrux Amulet on you, use it, then swap it out before your next long rest. Next up, we have the Cryptolord Ring. This is going to allow us to cast Create Undead without needing to use one of our very precious high-level spell slots. And since a lot of our summons do actually get stronger with upcasting, it is worth having that 6th level slot be ready for whatever it needs to be ready for. So saving our level 6 summon, like needing a spell slot at least once per long rest with the Cryptolord Ring, does make sense. So I like having this here. And finally, this is kind of a fringe pick, take whatever you like here, but I like this option, is the Snow Burst Ring. So whenever you deal cold damage, so basically Ray of Frost, you also create a 4.5 meter circle of ice around the target. So basically what you can do with that is cast Ray of Frost, and not only do they have a reduced movement speed to reach you, they could also slip on the ice and fall prone and have no chance of reaching you, then also allowing your summons to attack them with advantage next turn. I did also forget to include it on this build, but it will be linked in the description, is that the early game staff that I recommend is the Morning Frost, which will give you access to Ray of Frost as a cantrip early on, so you don't need to take it from your early levels, as well as giving you a few other things, like when you deal cold damage, you have a chance to inflict chilled, and there's also a fun little side quest attached to it. So yeah, so combining all those things together, especially with like the Cold Brim hat as well, cold damage with Ray of Frost might be the best option for your backline offense, but Firebolt also works quite well if you go with the Hat of Fire Acuity. So yeah, I don't think there's much else to talk about here, other than the camp clothing. I am wearing Fear Tailors, from the Fear Tailors camp clothing mod. I'm wearing the Bosun Gannet, which I believe is an NPC kind of equipment here, which basically just gives you like this cool trench coat look with the neckerchief there. Also the camp boots from the Citizens Camp Clothing mod, coloured in the Faerunian Colours dye mods, Karsus mod, which, you know, is a bit ironic considering this is Gale. But yeah, that is the build, and overall, you're a literal army. You have the ability to summon so many things to fight at your side that all have different effects and uses, the ability to support them with your wide array of cantrips. You yourself are able to get out of combat so you can keep these summons alive, and even if you do get smacked on the head pretty hard and would have dropped your concentration, you don't. The only thing that would cause you to drop your concentration from a Conjuration spell would be if you're knocked prone, so don't let that happen. Otherwise, you have a literal army at your beck and call. Yes, not all of your soldiers are loyal, but you can keep them in line with the features that we have. You have a ton of spell slot restoration between Arcane Recovery and the items that I've shown to be able to keep this army fighting well before your next long rest. And again, it's just such a fun playstyle to just to say, oh, you're a massive group of enemies in this encounter? Well, guess what? I'm also a massive group of enemies. Go, my legion! Speaking of that legion, let's have a look at some of our new friends. First up, we have the Vrock, which, as I said, Velociraptor with wings, also like a weird bird face and claws. I think this is like the Hook Horror from the Underdark, but they've attached angel wings to it. I mean, it looks bloody terrifying and epic all at the same time, and it comes with some unique abilities. Its basic attack is Talons, allowing it to deal 2d8 slashing damage and pushing the target back 2 meters, if it is not large or huge. There's also the ability to Pounce, where you can jump at a creature as a bonus action, possibly knocking them prone. It can fly, so it can jump and fly. Interesting. It comes with a multi-attack, allowing it to aim 2 attacks at a target that is prone or stunned, which it has the ability to do both. Obviously, we know it can knock targets prone. Spores, it can basically do kind of like Halo of Spores, which does 1d10 poison damage in a cone, in like a circle around it, and it requires a con save. Probably not the most useful thing in the world. But then also Stunning Screech, which can stun. You can only use this once per short rest, but that is still a very potent ability to just take someone out of the fight completely, and then hit them with the multi-attack immediately after. So yeah, quite a fun summon. Let's move on. Next up, we have the Metal Construct, which has a regular kind of slam attack that deals 1d8 plus 8 bludgeoning damage, as well as a multi-attack. This guy's pretty basic, but he does the job. Also, if someone attacks him, he can instantly retaliate with a bit of fire damage, about a 1d10, I believe. Or is this the one that retaliates with burning with... No, this is the clay one, isn't it? Yeah, the clay one and the metal one do kind of look the same. Unfortunately, they do share the same model. But this one does come with a poison resistance as well. So basically, he's just a guy who kind of hits things. We can also have a look at the other variants, because these are all variants of Summon Construct. Yeah, so the Clay Construct comes with Berserk Lashing, which after it's attacked, it can slam as a reaction. We also have the Metal Construct that allows you to retaliate with basically a small Hellish Rebuke. We have the Stone Construct, which inflicts enemies with Stone Lethargy, which makes it so they can't take reactions and their movement speed is half. And finally, the Flesh Construct, which calls forth the spirit of a Flesh Construct, but undergoes Dissolving Range when it goes under 50% HP, which means it takes a bit of damage every turn, but has advantage on attack rolls, is resistant to non-magical physical damage, and its movement speed is increased by 5 meters. Can you guess what this one looks like? Yeah. Fucking horrifying. Let's move on. Oh, go away, sir. No, we don't like you. You have 160 HP. You're a beefy boy. Nice. Moving on. Oh, he was the level 6 variant. Ah, that's why. Moving on, let's have a look at something else. As we did, we looked through the basically, all of these constructs look the same. They just have slightly different abilities, where the Flesh Golem is slightly different. We also have the Shadow Spawn. Let's have a look at the Shadow Spawn. So you've got 3 variations of the Shadow Spawn. The Shadow Spawn of Fear can hide in dim light or darkness as a bonus action, so it can do like the turning invisible thing, like the Shadow Spawn from Act 2, and can inflict fear with like a frightful presence. I use this one in testing. There's the Shadow Spawn of Fury and the Shadow Spawn of Despair. We can have a look at the Fury one. There he is, look, just like the beings from Act 2. And yeah, this one has the Dreadful Scream, which can induce fear into nearby creatures, and has the Chilling Hand, which does cold damage, 1d12 per 6, which is kind of nice. And we can summon the other variant as well, which is, if I just find it again here, it's going to be very scuffed because there's so much to menu through. The Despair one. Weight of Sorrow Aura, which comes with a whole bunch of stuff, including that same Dreadful Scream. So they all come with the same general abilities, but the aura that they exude has different effects. So this one reduces enemy movement speed. And obviously they come with a bunch of resistances as well. They have the Ethereal condition, so it can't be shoved, thrown, or used as an improvised weapon. They're immune to poison and necrotic, and have resistances to regular physical damage. So overall, a very, very cool summon. The only thing it hasn't got going for it is that lower HP stat, which will become a problem in the late game, but still has some powerful debuffs that it can inflict on enemies. And if the enemies are focused on your other summons a bit more, then this guy can still deal out some pain. Your desire. Next up, we have, let's have a look here. Well, the Summon Lesser Demon spell just summons the regular Imp and Quasit. Nothing new there. Let's have a look at the Summon Aberrations. You can summon a Spectator. Oh, in the original spell, this summons, in tabletop, this summons a Beholder Kin, so a Spectator's pretty close. It only has 40 HP, but it can do all the Spectator shenanigans. It's got the Wounding Ray, which deals psychic damage with an int saving throw. We have Confusion Ray that can befuddle enemies, which, as you know, it's kind of like makes it so they can't control themselves and they just kind of wander around. We have the Ray of Fear, which, you know, frightens its target, and the Paralyzing Ray, which can paralyze their target. Overall, quite a fun little dude to have. Great to have at range. This can be an at-range summon, which can be very, very problematic for your foes. The other option from Summon Aberration is the Cloaker, which looks freaking awesome. The Cloaker is like a giant manta ray thing. I think you fight this thing in Act 2. It comes with a bite attack, which can cause bleeding and does 1d10 plus 8 piercing damage. This one also has a multi-attack. Can aim multiple attacks at a target that cause gaping wounds and bleeding. The target must be frightened or have less than half of its maximum hit points. So this guy can actually synergize quite nicely with the Shadow Spawn. But this thing can also use Moan, which deals psychic damage and can potentially frighten enemies, and also gains access to summon phantasms, giving it basically mirror image. Yeah, you get to just basically play that one, like, hidden mini-boss fight as a summon. So bloody cool. Next up, Summon Elemental. You guys already know this one. This is the same as the kind of regular elementals. They just have a little bit less HP. So, for example, I can summon the Earth Elemental Spirit. And you can see they come with this ethereal blue because they're not 100% here, but they basically do all the same things as the regular summons. You have the multi-attack, you have the soil-clogged slam, which is slightly new, can knock enemies prone. They have the elemental warp. They do all the usual things, just with much less HP, but this guy still has 60, which is pretty damn good. And then finally, oh god, I've run out of spell slots, but that is why we have these things here. There you go, we get to show off how effective they can be. So, restore my level 6 spell slot, please. And I get to now play with Infernal Cooling, which will allow us to summon a Cambion or American Legion. The Cambion is the same as Will's spell, I believe, but it comes with a couple of new things, like Ray of Fire, which is quite nice. But here we can call forth the American Legion, which, it doesn't look like there's a Legion right now, because they're all inside each other, but there is 3 of these guys. And they're very, very cool. They each come with the crossbow shot. They can fire arrows of roaring thunder, cleave, lacerate, rush attack, and the main hand attack. So these guys basically are the enemies that you fight in Act 2, and you just get to have them. And remember, you only have control of these guys for 30 minutes, and then they become hostile. Or if you lose control over them, because, you know, you didn't keep your thingy up on them. I think I am going to... One of them turned hostile. And finally, we did in fact save the best for last, a goddamn dragon. So you can summon 5 different chromatic dragons. Each of them have the same abilities, except for their breath weapon will be different. For example, red dragon has fire, blue dragon has lightning, etc, etc. And they can each inflict different status conditions. The red dragon does burning, the blue dragon does shock, which I believe stops reactions. Oh no, yes. They have disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws using dex and cannot take reactions. Poison, which, let's have a look. They suffer disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. The black dragon can corrode your foes, which reduces armor class by 2, which is very cool. And the white dragon can chill your foes, making them vulnerable to cold damage and resistant to fire damage. So they could just make everyone vulnerable to cold damage, then hit them with frost breath for double damage. Each of the breath attacks does 4d6 of their chosen element. They all have frightful presence, meaning that every turn they just automatically instill fear. And they each have a multi-attack that incorporates their chosen element damage. Let's go for the iconic look. Actually, no. We've seen a red dragon in the game before. Let's summon a black dragon, because that's kind of new. Oh, you're still red, but you kind of have a dark aura about you. That's kind of cool. Also, Gale kind of has a spawn thing going on right now. Not entirely sure. But yes, this is the Draconic Spirit. Comes with 50 HP, but trust me, it more than makes up for it with its abilities. We have the Rend attack, which deals 1d6 plus 9 damage. The multi-attack, which is going to have some acid damage bumped onto it. Acid breath. Frightful presence, and yeah, we have flight in dragon form. So what you can actually do, and this is super cool, when you're not in combat, it's a Tressum! And then it automatically transforms back as soon as combat begins, and it can still fly as a Tressum. The fact that we never got Tara as a familiar for Gale in the base game is honestly criminal, because look at how amazing this is. And then you get into combat, and boom! Yeah, you fucked up, son. That is amazing. I absolutely love this as like a way of getting around, because dragons normally can't move on their own. Like, they just don't have a proper walking animation. They have to fly everywhere, because in the 2 fights that they have, they fly. Like, look, I'm actually trying to move this character with my Wasad keys right now, because I have a mod that lets me do that, and it just won't let me. But if I fly, I can select another space to be if there's enough space for it. There we go. Fly up. And then crash back down again. That's the only way the dragon can move, which is why the Tressum form exists for outside of combat. And that's a toggle, that's a passive you can toggle. And I believe that's it for all the summons. I don't think I missed any that aren't vanilla, in which case I've shown off the vanilla summons like Conjure Elemental, Create Undead, Conjure Minor Elemental, many, many times. Everything else is all vanilla. Oh, Bigby's Hand! How could I forget Bigby's Hand? Which can be upcast to deal more force damage. So you get a very big mage hand, if we have a look at it. Lasts for 10 turns. It can use inhibiting creatures' movement, so this just allows it to basically grapple a creature, which we don't really have grappling in this game otherwise, which is kind of nice. Clenched Fist, which is going to do 68 force damage because we upcast it. Grasping Hand, which allows you to grasp a huge or smaller creature, meaning that it can't move. Ooh. Okay, interesting. And then Crushing Hand, which can knock a creature prone. Overall, very, very cool. It comes with the regular shove action and the ability to fly. You know what? Let's shove a dragon. Can't heavy. There we go. Shove the clay golem. Actually, let's smash. Yeah, and we grasped them. Look, okay, so it just uses the entangle effect. And then this... Intersposed. I see. And now they have reduced movement speed. Interesting, interesting. I didn't really test Bigby's hand very much. Probably should have. But yes, that is all the summons. And that is now the end of the video. This has been an incredibly long one, for obvious reasons. But hey... I mean, what a way to go for 200 builds, man. Like, again, just all these new toys to play with is just so fun. And honestly, this has been an amazing video to make. This is one of my favorite kind of character archetypes when it comes to magic-based characters, is to play a summoner. I mean, perhaps this is the Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon fan that I've been since I'm a kid, kind of coming out here. Since I'm a kid? Since I was a kid. I am still a kid at heart, though. Like, honestly... Playing this type of character is just so fun to me, and the fact that Mistress Spells lets us do this, honestly, that full party of summoners of different classes is looking so bloody good right now that I feel like I've got to do it. I've already got one of the builds done, which basically covers all the basics for what you need to know about playing a summoner, which is this video, so maybe I could just do that as a full party build, but just kind of showcase the combat mainly. Who knows? But yes, that is my 200th build video over and done with. And man, what a way to go for that one, like I say. Obviously, my next video that is going to be coming out is going to be my slightly more highly edited statistics video, which is going to show off all the interesting statistics of the various builds I've done over the past year and a bit on this channel. And I think you guys are going to be quite surprised. Like, again, this was my first time using Conjuration Wizard. It is now tied with Illusion Wizard for only being used once. Which I think is absolutely insane. In fact, you know what? I've got my little tally chart of used classes. I'm going to add it to it right now live, because I forgot to include the Zealot build on here as well. And there we go. Wizard has now been used even more. And finally, one tally mark under Conjuration. It's been done. I've used every vanilla subclass in the game. Looking forward to that statistics video. I think you guys will quite enjoy it. But anyways, I think I'm going to officially sign off, because I have no idea how long this video is at this point. I had to stop and do other things midway through recording, so I've got like 3 different videos here that I've got to push together and hope it all makes sense. Thank you all for sticking with me for 200 build videos. That's the main reason why I posed in the Zealot video of asking what else you want to see, because let's be honest, we've hit 200 build videos and even more actual builds. Let's start branching out. I'm thinking mod showcases. That seems to be something people want to do. The Patron build series, which again is still builds, that is probably going to be a thing. There was a big response to that. Hoping to do a live stream to get that kicked off soon as the next big community effort. So we still have like a build progression series as like our main thing on the channel. But mod showcases could definitely be a thing, because apparently if I showcase lower, like lesser known mods, they have a higher chance of coming to console because it makes Larian focus on them. I don't know. I don't think Larian watches my videos. Do you? Do you, Larian? Do you know I exist? Do you care? I'm just kidding. But anyways, that is going to do it for me, because I've held on to you guys for way too long. I will quickly discuss the combat. I'm going back. I'm ranting again. Well, let's quickly discuss the combat footage, because there's something interesting I wanted to point out. Gale went down in the combat footage, because I decided to just throw him in there and see how long he lived, just without the summons like necessarily taking all the hits for him. And he went down kind of quick. Again, we're a squishy wizard. We're not exactly supposed to be in the thick of things. But the thing is Gale went down, and the summons kept fighting. We even kept the concentration on the other one, somehow. Like, if this build goes down, the summons will keep fighting. As long as they... I think as long as Gale doesn't outright die, so maybe the Periaptive Wound Closure to automatically stabilize could be useful. Like, just, like, even if you go down, your army keeps fighting for you. I don't know. Something interesting I wanted to point out. Right, I'm done for real this time. 100%. Thank you all so much for watching. For however many hundreds of hours my videos are at this point. Like, all of my videos are, like, holy shit. I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.